I want to talk about road allowances. When they set up the original layout of land, they put in what's called a road allowance. So the surveyors would walk with these big chains through the bush. The chains were 100 feet long. Sorry, the chain was 66 feet long, and they do 100 chains. So a concession would be about 6,600 feet in width, and it would run the length of the concession. And then they'd leave and measure out a one chain road allowance, so that would be 66 feet wide, to put a road in case they needed it. Now, not every road was built on the road allowance, so often if you're looking at the back of your property, you might think it's private, but technically there's a road allowance there, which means people could travel along that area, and so you may not have the privacy you expect. You cannot build on the road allowance, and it doesn't matter how long you're on there, because you can never acquire title to a public road, a highway in Ontario. That road allowance is there until it's closed or you acquire the property. This is significant in cottage country, because when they measured out these road allowances and they got to the edge of a lake, they did not know which way that they would build, and if they ever put in a road. And so they went around the lake sometimes, not in every case, in both directions. So the entire lake is surrounded by a 66-foot wide road allowance. When people bought properties up in the Muskoka, Haliburton area in the 1940s, 50s, the property was cheap. People built little cabins that weren't of any value, and they often built them on the road allowance. And what happened is, over the years, is those cabins would be replaced. And so if someone's searching title today, you want to make sure, is there a road allowance? Where is it? And where is it in relation to the cabin? This would be a good reason to have a survey, because a survey is going to locate any structures built on the property in space, and you're going to know, does it encroach on the shoreline road allowance? Because you may today have a cottage that's worth $500,000, $1 million, built on the road allowance, simply because people assumed that they could replace an earlier structure that no one really cared about with a more expensive structure, and it's right on the shoreline road allowance. So that's what a road allowance is. Some of the lakes you drive along, you will see that they were turned into a road, but I have never seen a lake in Ontario where they've actually built all the way around the lake. What it means, if you own a cottage, and let's assuming you're not on the shoreline road allowance, that's a good thing. But the problem is that in front of your house, it's a road allowance, and when you're buying, you need to be aware that people could be walking along in front of your cottage, and you may not have the same sort of privacy expectation, as well as knowing that you can never build on that. Meets and bounds descriptions. Meets and bounds descriptions they still exist. In a busy real estate practice, you may, if you're handling a lot of files, you're not going to see many of these, but you will see some. And it's a way of describing the property from a lot, as part of a lot, and the dimensions of the property. It is an extremely awkward way to describe property, because you have to describe the commencement point. It could be southwest corner of lot 1, concession 1, and then you're describing a direction, how many feet you have to travel, or meters that you have to travel to a point, and then the new direction that you have to go, so east, 200 meters, then you have to go south, you have to come back to the original starting point. You can have, as you can appreciate, you can have very complicated pieces of property, multi-sided properties that are not nice sort of boxes and rectangles. You can have easements on those properties that are described with meets and bounds descriptions. Very easy with those things to make a mistake, to leave a sentence off, to get a direction wrong, to get a number wrong. And over the years, when those meets and bounds descriptions would be copied, sometimes there would be mistakes, and they had to be corrected. You could have confusing descriptions adjoining properties where a deed describes the meets and bounds description, the boundaries of the property. You plot it out, and you would have to, on a title search, plot out your neighbor's meets and bounds descriptions on their deeds, and sometimes you found that they were overlapping descriptions, or just very confusing neighborhood. This led to the reference plan being adopted, in which the registrar said, let's clear up these confusions. Let's require the person who's transferring title to get a proper legal description by sending out a surveyor. Surveyor surveys all the boundaries in an area, and then we register that on title, and instead of referring to a complicated meets and bounds description, we just describe a part on a reference plan. So if it's a part of lot 1, instead of describing all the complicated boundaries and every lawyer buying having to plot that out and make sure it makes sense and that it came back to the starting point, it would be described as reference plan and number, and the part of the lot is maybe parts 1 and 2 on such and such a reference plan, and that would go into your legal description. We'll talk more about legal descriptions later, but that's the in the syllabus and the readings, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about reference plan, and we're going to look at that in more detail. Okay, thank you. So in lecture 2, if you're reading ahead, this is where we're going to go into legal descriptions. We're going to talk about plans, meets and bounds descriptions, surveys, and then the whole registry system versus the land title system. So we'll go into that, and I think I'll record another video lecture to just help you get started on this, so you can sort of keep up with both the syllabus and the textbook and the PowerPoints, and follow along with that. Thank you.